Okay, so today next class, games of the week. So for this class, I prepared two games to be honest, but I will probably have time enough for only one game, unfortunately, because it's very complicated and actually super interesting. That's why I don't think there will be enough time, including some puzzles for you guys and so on, to discuss everything on the other game too in detail. So probably we'll stick with this one only, but we will see how it goes. If there is enough time, I'll talk also about the other one. The game I want to talk about today is from Polish Championships that happened today between Wojciech Moranda and Radosław Wojtaszek. Very interesting game, crazy game, and this according to I wanted to say actually shout out to Wojtek, who said that read the book that I wrote on this subject and he analyzed this version himself. So thank you for getting the book, and I hope you like the rest of the material here as well. I'm glad it helped you win the game. And yeah, okay, so let's see what happened. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, Spanish or Ruy Lopez, A6, bishop A4, knight F6, short castle, and bishop C5. What's the name of the book? It's modernized Ruy Lopez in two volumes. This variation bishop c5 I discussed in volume 2 of the book, of those books. So bishop c5. This is a Moeller variation, and this recently has become extremely popular as well. Normally, black play here b5. Not normally, like other possibilities to go for classical Arkhangelsk, bishop c5, and after a4, let's say rook b8, c3, d6, d4, bishop b6, and so on and on. This is big, theory here as well, which is also the line I'm talking about in the book. Here in this game, bishop c5, however, happened, which is very interesting as well, especially after the developments, the theoretical developments that occurred in 2020, mainly due to games of one game in particular, and this is Dominguez versus Caruana. And this game, Moranda versus Wojtaszek, actually followed this game up to a point. So we will see in a moment what happened. So bishop c5, c3, b5, bishop c2. Of course, there is possibility to play bishop b3 as well. It's more solid, less sharp. But bishop c2 is the most critical, because the point is again here, if black plays b5, bishop b3, bishop c5. Now bishop is already on b3, has no possibility to go to c2. So if black plays first bishop c5 and we play c3, now b5, now we have two moves, right? Now we have two squares for the bishop. So that's why bishop c2 is the most principled, and supporting this pawn and threatening d4. So, but on the other hand, this bishop c2 move allows move d5. And this is of course the main position of the entire line. Yeah, right now white has big choice, really a big choice. There is possibility to play d4. There is move e takes d5 as well. There is move a4, which happened in the game, which I think is also the most testing. I would like to show at first what happened in my game versus John Ludwig Hammer that I played against in 2019, and I lost unfortunately with white. It was mainly because in general this tournament I wasn't playing well, because you know, it was just you know, by some reason I played horrible chess in the tournament when I played against him. So d4 is one of the possibilities as well. After d takes e5, e4, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d takes c5, queen e7. This is another possibility to play. The idea is to grab the pair of bishops, and if white grabs the pair of bishops, you know, and this should be generally good. But however, in this position, black has very good counterplay on the light squares, especially with the d4, d3 square. This knight can quickly get there, and objectively, black is doing well here, I believe. White can hope for some chances, of course, can look for some ideas, but objectively, this is okay for black. That's why a4 has become the main try here for white. And after d takes e4, a takes b5. This is the way to go here with white. I talk about this variation in detail in the book that I wrote, so I don't want to go, you know, like into all the intricacies here of what would have happened if this, if that. Just want to give general idea what's happening. Of course, due to this pin, right now this point is impossible to take, and knight is under attack. And of course, there are moves like right now e takes f3. There are also other moves. The moves hasn't been played yet. I talk about everything in the book. However, the most testing move is of course bishop g4. The bishop g4 to get to pin the knight with the queen. Pawn takes c6, and now e takes f3 with idea of destroying the pawn structure around white's king, and hoping to create some attack against white's king. On the other hand, this gives white material advantage of like what a pawn. So after g takes f3, you know, white has extra pawn. Bishop h3, very logical. Another possibility is to play bishop e6, which I think happened in the game, if I'm not mistaken, Caruana versus Oniszczuk, some US championships a few years ago. But this is not the most critical here. The best move is bishop h3 to hit the rook on e1, on f1. Now white plays rook e1, short castle, and the critical move for the entire line is to play move here rook to a5. So idea of rook a5 is to put pressure on this bishop on c5 and pawn on e5, and ideally provoke this this bishop to go back to d6. If this bishop would go to d6, then it would be, you know, sort of like an achievement, because then bishop would be a little bit passive. And I talk about about this line in the book as well. And here bishop knight, I think knight d3 is simply very good move, followed by idea of knight c4. In general, white, I believe that white is better in this position. So that's why, because of that, generally, considering that white already, black already sacrificed a pawn, and second pawn is gonna be lost soon, pretty much, black should try to look for some activity, especially that white's king is exposed. So that's why the modern, you know, engines and so on suggest move queen d6. And the idea of queen d6 is this is also what Fabiano played against Lenier Dominguez. Queen d6, b4 seemingly just loses the pawn, right? Because like, okay, bishop goes back, we simply play rook takes e5, and then after queen c6 even we can play d4, killing this bishop. You know, bishop comes out to f4 or g5, you know, maybe queen d3. This is just winning for white. White castle, sack the knight on e4, threaten queen g5. White castle here, knight e4. Well, it's not so easy. If you threaten queen g5 in this position, I can first of all take with the rook. If you play queen g5, I can play rook g4 and cover. So this is the first and foremost. And here I think white is winning. But additionally, I don't think it's the only way, to be honest, because I can play d4 myself right now, which is I think even stronger, because it doesn't still stops queen g5, right? So you don't have this mating idea, and your bishop is under attack, knight is under attack, and that's pretty much about it, I believe. And the game is just over, I think. White wins. So knight d4 is not does not really work. So coming back to what I was talking in the game, queen d6, b4. So yeah, bishop b6 is not good, as I was saying. So if bishop b6 is not good, it means that basically black needs to look for some very dramatic, I don't know, or concrete ideas. So bishop takes f2, basically sacrificing the piece to destroy white's king even further. King takes f2, e4, king g1, rook e8. E4, idea of queen h2, obviously. Maybe I should slow down here with this line because it's very complicated. E4 idea is queen h2, obviously, so it makes sense to go back with king g1. Now, the beauty of this variation in general is that there is no immediate mate or immediate attack against white's king, but black simply throws in another piece to the attack. Rook e8 with hoping to continue the attack, but not try to mate right away. Similar to what I discussed in knight d5 lecture in Grandmaster's Choice. Knight d5 idea was to put some very big practical problems to the opponent, not necessarily win right away. Here it's pretty much the same concept. So rook a8, rook joins the game, and now rook e3 has to be played. Let me not go into details. Essentially, white queen needs to bring the queen to the defend here, which is totally crazy, of course, and so on. But knight g4 and queen h2. Well, I'm gonna take it. I'm not gonna allow you to play knight g4 so easily, and here I win. So you cannot play knight g4, Osama. So after rook e3, the best move is knight h5. Knight h5, and he's just putting the knight under attack, right? But the point is that queen g6 is a big threat, and we'll go after this king with checkmate on g2 or on f1. For instance, this is not possible right now because queen g6, king h1, queen g2, right? Or queen f2, or king f2, queen g2, and queen f1, checkmate. So this simply wins for black. So white cannot take the knight. But white should do, what white should do is to play rook g5. Bring the rook to the defense of the king. Queen h6, f4, queen f4, and now this to be honest was all played already. There were 2 games as far as I checked. 2 games. I think Ikeda versus Kuibokarov is 1 game, and let me just yeah, it was Ikeda versus Kuibokarov. Yeah, actually, I should step back for a second. F4 was the Ikeda versus Kuibokarov, but in this position, rook g3 was played by Leonard Dominguez, and this was the first game here that I would like to show. And this is the very safe option, but it doesn't give any advantage to white, and in reality black's position is very, very good here, because this king still remains bad. After knight takes g3, h takes g3, e takes f3, queen takes f3. Now after rook e6, position of white's king is very, very shaky. Those pieces are not still developed. And even though positions objectively equal, it is very difficult to play here with white, I believe. And I think that black has better, from practical point of view, black has better chances. And this is in the game. Dominguez Caruana followed queen f4, which was met by g5, queen d4, rook d6, and queen e5, rook e6, queen d4, rook d6. Fabiano was happy with a draw here, but Leonard Dominguez decided to play for a win with queen e4, and he eventually went on losing the game because Fabiano played rook f6 with threat of rook f1. So bishop d3 has been played, and now bishop f5, and this and black has I think very good initiative here, because again those pieces are not playing, and this king is still very, very weak. So that's what happened in this first game in this variation. So the next game that happened here was Queen h6 and right now f4. So this is also what happened in this game, Moranda versus Wojtaszek. So f4. The idea is to slow down a little bit the black's initiative, and sort of close up the king side, because after move like rook g3, you see like, let's say pawn takes, everything is getting opened, right? So if we play f4, we at least make sure that these rooks are not easily coming to the game. So f4 is the move. And now knight takes f4, and now white has two moves, either rook to g3 back, this one, or this one to g3. Both are very interesting. In the game Ikeda versus Quibokarov, I think it was rook eg3, and sorry, rook gg3, sorry, my bad. And in this game Wojtek Moranda played rook e to g3. Both moves are extremely testing, both moves are extremely interesting for to play for a win. I analyze both in the book, so for you can refer to that whenever you have a chance, because both lines are just crazy. I go there in detail about all of it. So in the game here happened rook eg3, which is also of course very interesting. f5, rook takes g7, queen takes g7. Black should generally give away the queen for the two rooks, and with idea of taking those rooks away and weakening further white's king takes g7. So and now Wojtek Moranda played queen e1. So after queen e1, this is the critical position. So after queen e1, the position is totally crazy, obviously. It's like, no doubt, it's still obviously crazy position. Totally imbalanced. White has a queen and a piece for two rooks. And if white manages to get out of those pieces, right, this bishop and from c1 and knight from b1, white will be winning. White will be definitely winning. However, it is not so easy to do that, because black has, but first of all, black is on the move, and black can definitely put some pressure against white's king. And the best idea, I think, right now in this position is to play move rook to f6, and this is what also I think Moranda said in the commentary after the game. That rook f6 was the best move. I totally agree with that. Rook f6, I think, leads to a very crazy position again. After rook f6, the threat is of course rook g6, and it is king is in big trouble. So after rook queen e3, for instance, rook g6, king f2, Wojtek Moranda suggested right now rook to g4, and again, this is exactly what I also analyzed in the book, and the position is absolutely crazy. Black has, I think, very good compensation for the piece, is for the queen, I mean, and the piece. So and because this king is just so weak, and there are all sort of ideas against this king that black can try, and it is not easy for white to find a move. And the point is that essentially right now everything is well defended for black, and the rook can simply maybe join the game at some point with strengthening the attack. And but rook g4 is a very difficult move to play, especially if you don't remember or something. I'm pretty sure that Radosław Wojtaszek had all prepared, but probably he just didn't remember. So that's why sometimes at this level, whenever grandmasters prepare with engines so well before the game, sometimes such details in move number 20 or 25 pretty much decide the game, because in this position after queen e1, rook f6, rook g4, rook g6, rook g4 was the key idea that held here for black. But Radoslaw played e3, which is also very logical to be honest, because e3 seems like it opens the king, some files for the rooks, makes this rook also very active. With lines like rook f6, rook g6, this rook is already participating in the game, but simply tactically it doesn't work. d4, this is not, I think, good move, because again, just rook f6. I think this will be, I think, better version. But no, we can just simply take the pawn. We can simply take the pawn. We can take the pawn. This will happen in the game. Rook f6. So again, idea of rook f6, rook g6 is always there. And king f2. You know, king needs to run pretty much from this g file. Rook g6, again, threatening ideas of rook g2 and so on. But it appears that simply knight d2 finally bring this knight to the game. And this is a big difference with the previous position. Whenever white had pawn on d2 and black had pawn on e4, I'll quickly go back there just to show what I mean. Let's say something like this, right? The position after rook g4. Unfortunately, this knight on b1 cannot quickly join the game here. It cannot quickly join the game. This knight is stuck there. However, in this position as in the game, knight is already on d2. Knight is already on d2, and this makes a lot of a lot of difference, because right now black needs to be very careful to pretty much make sure that this attack is sufficient for equality. Not talking about already being better, but just talking about equality. To be honest, I don't think it suffices anymore. So in the game for rook g2, king f3, and knight g6. So of course the threat is like knight e5, right? And this king will go for a walk, for a stroll around all sort of mating nets and stuff. So right now white needs to protect the king. So white played e4. The idea is to basically have e3 square available in any instance. And up to this point, okay, I think this move, e3, as shown here, wasn't accurate, but still was quite okay. Wasn't losing. However, here after e4, I think Radek made a decisive mistake. He played knight e5, and this is, I think, a blunder that pretty much loses. So the best way to play here was to play f4, I believe, and retain all the ideas, but first to take control over the square on e3. Again, the position is obviously totally crazy still. I think it's like engine play, like engine analysis right now, and all of this is very, very complicated. And I analyzed this, and I think I figured a way to somehow save this for black, even though it's very complicated. But anyway, I would like to share my discovery. Not sure how, perhaps it could be improved somewhere, but at least at the first sight, what I analyzed, somehow it seems to work. However, this requires, of course, huge accuracy from both sides to play, and what I'm gonna show right now is pretty much just computer analysis that I performed, but it pretty much doesn't make sense. I'll try to explain what's happening. So the best move is queen h1. The best move for white is to play queen h1 and attack the rook on g2, hoping to basically capture it, simplify the position, and enter some endgame whenever this king will be finally safe, because whenever it will be an endgame, the king should be safe. So in this position, black has some choice. The best move is, one of the typical or logical moves is to play, say, knight h4, but it simply doesn't work because king f4, and again, this king can simply finally get to a3 square, so knight h4 doesn't work. Another possibility is to play, for instance, move king h6. King h6 also makes some sense to get this king out of the g file, because queen takes g2 is a big threat. Let's say if black plays some random move like rook e7, just waiting move, queen g2, and white pretty much wins. Because right now knight h4 is not possible because king and knight are pinned. So bishop g2, king g2, this endgame is obviously winning for white. Therefore, the point is for black to remove the king from the g file in order to have knight h4 available. Let's say that's why king h6 makes sense, because after queen g2, knight h4, and to hope to get to get queen in this way, and play and hope to save this position. However, here I believe in this instance I think white has some chances to win the game. King takes f4, knight takes g2, and king g3. Right now both pieces are a little bit shaky. Bishop on h3 is under attack, so black should play rook g8, and of course king h3 leads to a perpetual check with a draw. King h4, knight g2, and just a draw. So white should not take the knight, the bishop and white should play king to f2. And here in this position we have essentially, for instance, after knight f4, king e3, rook g1 I analyzed, knight b3, rook f1, bishop d2, something like this. One of the example lines, not only, it's not exclusive, there are also some alternatives as well. However, here after bishop d2, in this position in general, white's exchange down, but has two pawns for this exchange, and potentially those pawns are weak. So, and very importantly, pawn c6 is very advanced. So if we can capture these guys like this, pawn c6 may eventually become a very strong pawn. And also white has pair of bishops, which also helps. Finally, king is safe. White's king is safe, so it's also an important detail. I think white has some chances here. I think white is better in this position. That's why I don't know if this is what Wojtek was analyzing, probably something along those lines. But I think that after f4, queen h1, the best move is king f6. And this is exactly the same idea like king h6, but the difference is that it is already thinking about the future. Assuming that queen, white will take queen takes g2 and there will be some endgame, black king should be also, in the center already. So that's kind of like, pretty much nearly inhuman to find over the board, things like that. Anyway, position is just inhuman to achieve without computer preparation at first place. So yeah, king f6 is also, very, very difficult move. Here I analyzed a bunch of possibilities for both sides, and I eventually concluded that perhaps, sorry, not queen g2, perhaps bishop b3, I guess, is the best chance, or bishop b3, or yeah, bishop b3 or queen g2 was the best chance. But again, this analysis is totally crazy. So after bishop b3, h5, sorry, bishop d5, rook to g5, and to be honest, I myself hard time understanding what's going on here. It's just, at this point, it's just memorization, try not to blunder at one move at a time. This type of chess, this variation leads to. So after rook g5, white, position is just crazy. After king f2, let's say knight e5, black always has some initiative, but probably with correct play, the game should end with a draw. For instance, after bishop c4, rook g2, takes, and finally take here and enter some endgame like this, with probable draw. Anyway, this was of course probably the best play for black, and still with chances to make a draw. And of course queen g2, this is already a worse version of king on h6, because after knight h4, king f4, knight g2, king g3, rook g8, of course king h3 again is just a draw, and king h5 will lead very likely to only trouble rather than for white. So after king f2, right now black can play knight h4, and the difference is that this king is on f6, not on h6, so knight h4 is possible. If king on h6, there will be knight f3, and for instance, right here However, king is on f6, and while black threatens rook g2, invade, and with sufficient counterplay essentially. So therefore, this was leading to a draw. So f4, this move was pretty much only way to survive here. Only way to survive here with black, and after queen h1, very difficult move, king f6. Yeah, and according to my analysis, basically this position holds for black. So let's see what happened in the game. After e4, Wojtaszek played king knight e5. Now king e3, king goes, king escapes pretty much, and it is already too late. It's already white is winning. After f4, king takes f4, knight g4. Very important move, e5. e5. The point is of e5 to, again, as earlier we played e4 to get e3 square for the king. Now we play e5 to obtain e4 square for the king in case of any check on f8 or something like that. And the king pretty much escapes. And the rest of the game is just over, because knight takes e5 allows white to play queen takes e5, rook takes e5, king takes e5, and after rook takes h2, we enter this endgame, where essentially, again, pawn on c6 is the deciding factor. If not for pawn on c6, I think the game would be very close to a draw, but with pawn on c6 so being so advanced, and those pawns being weak on a6 and c7, I think white is simply winning. So bishop e4, the rest is pretty much very nice technique here by Wojciech Moranda. So let's see how he won. Knight f3, bishop g2, king d4, rook f2. Now knight g5. It makes sense to trade those knights, those bishops, and simplify the position a little bit, and then attack those pawns on c7 and a6 with the knight and bishop. So bishop takes, knight takes, hitting the rook. Rook f1, bishop to g5, bishop goes to d8 potentially at some point. Of course, not immediately, because it will be rook d1, right? So into some small caution is required. Bishop e7 is very accurate. h5, trying to look for counter with the pawn on the pawn on the king side. Try to run with it forward, but right now knight c5 followed by knight a6. This is simply winning. a5 followed, pawn takes, h4. Trying to push this pawn forward as quickly as possible, but this is not sufficient, because bishop takes h4, rook f4, king d5, rook takes h4, and this pawn and this endgame is simply winning because of a6, and white is pretty much on time to promote the pawn to the queen, because the black's king is simply too far away. And this is winning for white. So in the game happened king f7, a7, rook h8. Now knight a6, hitting pawn on c7. Yes, white is losing pawn on a7, but winning pawn on c7. And again, as I was saying earlier, the c6 pawn is the key pawn, and simply there is no way to stop it. Basically c7 next, and the game is over. No, after pretty much anything. Even after rook a5, which was what happened in the game. Right now c7 wins, c7, and after rook b5, okay, and notations such as there was king e4, of course, I think it was because white wanted to, players put kings on e4 and d5 to put those kings, in the center to claim the white winning the game. So, but of course, had to be played king d4 or king c4, or both moves pretty much win on the spot. Or king d6 even wins as well. But king d4 or king c4 are the easiest. So, yes. So this is the game that I wanted to talk about. Moranda versus Wojtaszek. Very interesting game. Very interesting game. Big theoretical fight in the opening, and eventually, Wojciech Moranda was successful to win, to use his preparation and win the game convincingly. Personally, I'm happy that the variation that I analyzed for the book was used by very strong grandmasters. So this makes me, personally happy that I could see this variation appear on the board. And actually, after later saying that, after reading some, or maybe not the entire book, but let's say part of this book that I wrote. What is the best way to avoid this risky variation for black? The best way is to avoid this variation for black is not to play bishop c5. Because if you play bishop c5, you essentially agree to enter this line. And this pretty much is the best way to play with black, whatever happened in the game. So if you want to play a different type of Ruy Lopez, for instance bishop e7, or maybe b5, bishop c5, you are playing bishop c5, those are the ways to go. Because if you play bishop c5 right away, then c3, b5, bishop c2, there is pretty much no way to not to play d4, not to play like not to enter this line. So that's pretty much what I think is going on. Like all those moves, are nearly, maybe not forced, but nearly forced. Of course, there are alternatives as well here. Let's say like bishop g4. I mean, it's one move, but there are also moves like I think short castle. I think there's also take on f3. You can try these moves, but I think the position is crazy either way, and very risky for black. So therefore, I would probably suggest to play other line like b5, bishop c5. Oh, come on, why can I move? Yeah, b5 and bishop c5 if you want to go for something similar, or in this position to play, like bishop e7 for instance, which is the classical, or even open Spain, knight takes e4. Pretty much all of them are covered in the book as well. Okay, I hope this makes sense and it helps. So just give me a second, guys. I'm gonna because we're still like 15 minutes. I think maybe we'll not cover entire game again of the second game that I prepared, but pretty much we'll cover a little bit, and I think probably I will skim through some of the parts, but I will show the most interesting moments from the game that next I want to show. So the next game that I prepared is the game of also Radoslaw Wojtaszek, but this time against Bartosz Socko. So this game actually Radoslaw Wojtaszek won, and he won in 28 moves. He won in 28 moves. I think 28, maybe. Yeah, 28 moves, yes, I remember correctly. So this was a very good game by Radek, and he showed this time very, very strong and good preparation here with white pieces as well. So let's see what happened. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, g3. So this is invitation to Catalan. After d5 there will be probably bishop g2, and with the Catalan. However, Bartosz Socko decided to play c5, which allows white to play d5, which transfers to Benoni. So e takes d5, c takes d5. Oh, hello Jan. Cześć. Dzięki za pozdrowienia. Thanks for the greetings. d6, knight c3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. The idea, let me go back. I lost focus for a second. Here the idea to play c5 is to enter Benoni, pretty much enter Benoni, but with already g3 being played on the board. Because in Benoni, white has generally so many options, good options to obtain some promising position. For instance, I can maybe show here like knight f3, for instance, or maybe I should say knight c3, let's say c5, d5 takes, d6. Right now in this position, white has number of ways to play this, number of setups. For instance, one setup is knight f3, bishop f4. Another setup, like maybe we should put it g6, bishop f4. This is one possibility. Another possibility is to play e4, g6, and now knight e2, knight g3. It's also possible to play play bishop d3, knight e2. There's also classical plans. Oh, hold on, why can I move this? How can I remove the... Okay, now. Also, there is setup to play f3 and transpose to Benoni with f3, which also appears from Zemish variation in King's Indian. Another possibility is go to simply for classical stuff like knight f3, bishop g7, bishop e2, short castle, knight d2, for example. Another possibility is to play move f4, bishop g7, bishop b5, which is very crazy and concrete and dynamic variation. So all of those possibilities are there, and and apart from that, there is also move g3. So if white starts with move g3, the key is that if c5 and we have Benoni, the white is already committed to play, Benoni with g3, which, if you are a Benoni player, it reduces pretty much what you have to learn, right? So this is, this is basically black's idea here. So in game flow, it takes d5, c takes d5, d6, knight c3, g6, bishop g2. This is all theory. Bishop g7, knight f3, short castle, rook e8. I think this is the main move. Right now there is quite a big theory, of course, in number of ways. White has many moves. For some, in 2000, I think, what was it? 2012, I believe. I played myself here knight d2 and against Yuri Krivoruchko, and I won very nice game with white. However, the theory suggests nowadays that this is just equal. While black can have a good game in number of ways. Bishop f4 is the most testing, I believe, or let's say maybe not the most testing, but the most popular. Probably also the most testing, but you can try to look for it pretty much anywhere. But Radoslaw Wojtaszek played move rook e1, which is also popular lately, and I also played myself in 2019 against Ilyas Mirin in St. Louis Winter Classic, I think it was, or no, it was Winter Classic, I believe, St. Louis Winter Classic, one of those classics. And I think I had very good chances at some point, but then I was under pressure as well, so it was very double-edged game, very interesting. Eventually, and it ended up being a draw. So okay, rook e1 happened in the game. Right now, Bartosz Socko played move knight a6. So I think knight a6 is a little bit inaccurate. I think personally the knight bd7 or a6 and knight bd7, say a6, a4, knight bd7 is the way to go, one of these two. However, knight a6 I think is a kind of like, of course it's possible many players play this move, but I think it's a little bit inaccurate in my opinion, and precisely because of what Radoslaw Wojtaszek played, bishop f4. After bishop f4, there's there again number of moves for black and for white as well, but in general the point is that, let me go back for a second. After bishop f4, knight d4 is considered as really good, and if white plays rook e1, knight a6, now bishop f4, knight d4 is not that good. By some reason, inclusion of moves like rook e1 and knight a6 makes a huge difference in the evaluation of this position, and we'll see in a second what makes the difference. But first, let's look at this line with knight d4, because the point is after this, and knight d2. Of course, if rook goes back, knight c4 is simply huge advantage for white, because there are certain issues with pawn d6. So black has to sacrifice the exchange, and bishop takes b2, rook b1, bishop g7. And the point is, in general, is very often this knight has a possibility and choice where to go, either to a6 or to d7. whenever it needs to go to e7, it goes to d7 and stops e5 ideas. Let's say e4, e4, e5 ideas. But if you can already see that if the same thing happens with this pawn on, sorry, not this, with the same thing happens here after knight e4, with the inclusion of rook e1 and knight a6, it's already way different story, because in the same position, white already played rook e1, which supports e4, e5, while knight on a6 is already could be misplaced because it has no option to go to d7. So that's pretty much the general difference in my opinion. So probably better move was like bishop g4 maybe, or maybe like bishop f5, but you know, it's been a while since I analyzed this, so I just know that knight e4 is not considered as the best move. But anyway, I think in general, because of knight a6, bishop f4, with inclusion of this rook e1 move, white can hope for some advantage here. But okay, in the game for knight e4, knight takes d4, rook takes d4, knight d2, rook takes f4, sacrificing the exchange, correct, takes, rook b1, bishop g7. So we got this position, right? Similar to the one we talked about earlier, like this one, but the difference is the inclusion of the moves rook e1 and knight a6. So let's go back there. And right now it's clear that white's I think it's clear that this is advantageous to white, because white can play e4 very quickly and play move e5. Very quickly support this e4, e5 idea. While in the other variation there was possibility to play knight d7 and somehow resist this idea of e5. Right now knight on a6 is misplaced. Therefore I think white has very good chances, and it was very good preparation here by Radek, and basically because of that I think Bartosz lost this game, because right now this position already looks very suspicious to me. So okay, so in this position Bartosz Socko played move knight to b4, trying to activate this knight, which is of course very logical, trying to, you know, activate pieces and jump with this knight to you know, d3 square, and this would be a great idea if only it worked. Unfortunately there is some certain problem that, you know, this leads to this knight to be simply misplaced. So but anyway, position is already very risky, so potentially maybe it was better to play like rook b8, or maybe play bishop with idea of b5. Let me just put it on the board. Let's say play maybe rook b8 for idea of b5 maybe, or play move like bishop h6, challenge this pawn at least. But anyway, after bishop h6, for example, I think white has very strong attack after, or initiative after e5, bishop f4, and now e6. So this position probably is just very bad for black, because those pawns are just so advanced, and they stop the development of those this bishop on c8 and rook on a8. So if that's the case, well, you know, it simply doesn't look good if black cannot bring those pieces to the game. But okay, knight b4 tries to activate this bishop, but designed at least, so it's logical of course, but it still doesn't really solve problems. Rook b8 followed by b5 also made some sense. However, after, you know, rook b8 value b5 makes some sense as well. But again, just e5 is always a problem. So I just think that in this position after e4 there is already huge advantage to Radoslaw Wojtaszek. So after knight b4, rook b3 I think was a very neat move, because stops knight d3 idea and ignores pawn a2, and yeah, pretty much stops. It's a very good prophylactical idea. e5 comes next, so knight takes a2 followed, but you know, after knight takes a2 this knight is also misplaced. However, of course the idea is to bring this knight maybe to the game with knight c3, or, you know, or something like that. So again, we should just continue with our plan with white play move e5, and e5 leads to obviously great problems for black, and as I checked with the engine, this is already, you know, winning for white, which is surprising because, I mean, on one hand it's surprising, this move number 17 and white is already, you know, winning, but on the other hand it perfectly makes sense because of the this bad knight on a6. That's why you should try to, in such structures like Benoni, especially in such lines with you know, with such sharp lines like, you know, with this exchange sacrifice, it is very I don't know how to put it, but like it's very complicated and you need to be very careful how you put your pieces. You need to kind of like just try to not be guessing it, of course, but try to, you know, assess correctly, which is of course comes with experience, comes with let's say knowledge of the position, and homework analysis. That's why it's, you know, in general, who works more on chess than understands those positions better, right? Okay. Anyway, e5, very strong move. Now knight b4, knight comes back, but is of course logical. But again, the same idea as earlier with this knight bishop h6, bishop f4, where white played move e6. Basically, both pawns are just dominating here, and white has huge attack, and technically white is just winning. The rest of the game is pretty much very nice technique and you know, powerful play by Radek, who convincingly won this game, and with it the first game of their semi-final match in Polish Championships. So let's see what happened. e6, simply queen e7, but again, just push the pawns forward, weaken the king side, f5, very logical. Pawn takes, knight c4. Right now rook can swing always to the king side through g3, and yeah, the rest of the game is pretty much you know, you know, like not irrelevant, but like it's very difficult for black to make anything out of it, and Radek Wojtaszek convincingly won. So let's see how it happened. Pawn takes, bishop takes, simply rook e3. This pin is just very annoying. Queen h4, at least trying to get this knight on c4, but knight d6. Again, this king is just so weak. It's basically no way for black to salvage this, unfortunately. So rook f7, so bishop f7. Happened the game, simply takes, and no, queen d7. The fact that, you know, black has, you know, like 3 extra pawns for I mean 3 pawns for the exchange is totally irrelevant, because what matters the most is the king's safety, and this king is simply too exposed to be defended. So after queen d7, king g8, rook to g3, queen f6, and finally final piece joins the attack, rook e7, and here Bartosz Socko resigned, and Radek won a very nice game. So okay, this is pretty much all I prepared for today. I hope it was interesting, especially I mean the opening in this one, I mean pretty much both openings in this one and the previous game. I think both there was lots of powerful and combinative play in both games, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. So thank you for today, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, have a good one.